Today, the base of society is not slavery. It is everything that we use to meet the requirements of life, the food, shelter, all of this is produced through the purchase of somebody else's labor power. Socialized production and private appropriation. If we were to look at our clothes and the labels where they're made, this would become very clear. They're made from small children and laboring people all over the world. This is the foundation of society. And so in this society, it's, and the morality and the laws reflect this. In this society, it's deemed moral and legal for somebody to fire somebody. If you're a business owner or a corporation owner or something like this, you can fire people even if it's going to deny them the ability to eat, to survive, even if they'll be out on the street. If you can't make a profit, that's perfectly legal. But if you've been denied the ability to work and you can't afford food, if you go into the grocery store and take food, that's considered immoral. This society, because of the foundation of capitalism, gives you the right to exploit, but not the right to eat. And these ideas of what's moral and immoral, once again, reflect the base of the society. And similarly, if you were to go back to the earliest parts of human history, where we spent the majority of our time in gatherer-hunter societies, if you were to say, I'm against slavery, it would have no meaning because they lived in societies before the basis existed to enslave each other. So morality has different meanings at different times. There is no such thing as a transcendent morality. And also in different eras, the morality is different for the oppressor than it is for the oppressed. So what should we root our morality in today? And what is the morality that corresponds to the interests of the exploited and oppressed and ultimately to humanity as a whole? Today, the development of the productive forces has brought humanity to a historic threshold. The basis now exists for humanity to utilize the massive socialized means of production that have been developed under capitalism and the global networks of production, distribution, and communication to meet the most basic needs of humanity as a whole and to establish an economic foundation and a revolutionary state and society through which society can set out to overcome all the relations of exploitation, oppression, and degradation which have been a mark of class society. All this is held back not by some innate selfishness or human nature. Maybe we could talk about this more. I'll try to compress. I know I'm running out of time. But you saw some of this even in Hurricane Katrina. People tried to volunteer and help each other. People risked their lives to help each other. And they were held back not because of their narrow self-interest or human nature, but because the state came in and literally sent in orders, took troops off rescue missions and sent them in to shoot to kill because the state was protecting private property above human life. And people tried to volunteer and come down. They were kept out by the National Guard. You saw the straining for a different morality that corresponds to the leap that's possible, and you saw that being held back by this society and this state. In this book, Bob Avakian emphasizes that the morality we need in this era is communist morality. It's a morality that's consistent with bringing into being the four alls that Marx talked about, and I'm really trying to compress, but he talked about moving beyond all class relations, all production relations of exploitation on which those class relations rest, all social relations that correspond to those oppressive production relations, and all the ideas that correspond to that, all the notions of right and wrong and human nature. And so the morality that we need is a morality that's consistent with achieving that society and that can be the guide and serve us in the struggle to get there. It's a morality that fosters mutual respect and equality between men and women, that fosters equality between nations and takes on all forms of white supremacy, national chauvinism, American chauvinism, and racism. It's a morality that does not correspond to the organized enforcement of ignorance, which is what religion is, or the consigning of huge sections of humanity to ignorance because they're going to do nothing but be, the grist of production in sweatshops around the world, but places the needs of humanity first and fosters a critical spirit, a scientific attitude, and a search for the truth among everybody. This is a morality that corresponds to a world that is possible, and it's a morality that corresponds to the fight to bring that world into being today. So, returning to the story that I began with and trying to wrap up here for you guys, the women and the others in this Black Studies office were offended by what I said, and some would say that taking away the solace of religion offers, especially to those who are exploited and oppressed, that this is wrong. But I firmly believe, and this is a big theme in Avakian's book, that the masses of people do not need consolation. They need emancipation. And the masses of people, including those who are caught up in religion today, need to break out of it and need to be aided in breaking out of it. We need a movement of militant atheism challenging people to get with reality and look at the world as it is and act on the understanding that it could be different and the morality and the meaning that comes from striving to bring that into being. And there's a lot more that's gone into in this book that's very useful in that. It's a great resource and a tool for people who are trying to do that. It demystifies the rise of religion. In early Christianity, it shows how the Bible Belt in this country is the lynching belt, how this has been shaped at different points, philosophical questions about human nature and critical thought. And so I invite you to get it, and I'm just going to end by reading the very last paragraph of it, because it offers a vision of what is possible. And I want you to imagine what it would mean, and I'm going to quote, "To live in a world where it will be possible to give flight to the imagination without being caught up in the illusion that the imaginary is real, where people will not go through life fearing the supposedly awesome power of supernatural beings which in fact do not exist, where religion and superstition no longer stand in the way of consciously engaging and changing reality in the interests of humanity, where there will be no need to search desperately for some other next life in which the endless night of suffering and anguish, mental as well as physical, which is the experience today of the vast majority of humanity, will finally come to an end. No need, because that suffering and anguish will have been ended in this world. This is what it will mean to be free in a qualitatively new and far greater way than ever before in the history of humanity."